Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we are going to talk about how to be the best pilot possible playing Star Wars Unlimited, which really comes down to your ability to find the right plays. So how do we find the right plays more often? So in this guide, I'm going to tell you what the decision making of every single play in the game comes down to and how to improve your decision making during a game. So we'll start off by saying that this video is sponsored by Card Market, the best marketplace to buy and find cards in Europe. So I haven't made a video for a week. I've been busy with holidays and the baby obviously, and now I'm back in the game to explain you everything that comes down to trying to find the best place possible whenever you're playing a game of Star Wars Unlimited, and how to improve that. So I've created like this little iceberg of decision making. And to me, decision making during the game really comes down to four main elements. The first one is to understand your deck and the lines of play that makes this deck powerful. So what I'm saying by this is that, for example, so this is the most basic understanding. This is the tip of the iceberg, is understanding your own decks and the synergies between the different cards. Understand why the reason why the cards are in the deck, and this is something that you can learn even before playing the deck, simply by watching a deck or simply just by using your experience and trying to figure out the reason why each card is in the deck. So a simple example for this is, I've seen this a lot, for example, with the new Kylo Tarkin Town deck. A lot of people just simply deploy Kylo on curve whenever he comes down on 7 and try to put as many upgrades as possible on him, and ended up kind of pulling out a very underwhelming leader that doesn't really do much, while Kylo is supposed to be a win condition. The deployment of Kylo in this Kylo Tarkin Town deck is either supposed to win you the game or put you such an extremely far ahead in the game. And if there's one leader in the game that really wants to be where the deployment of that leader really wants to be delayed, it has to be Kylo. You need to find openings where you know Kylo is not going to be answered, where you're going to be able to dish out tons and tons of damage, possibly just win the game in one turn. It is a combo deck after all, so even though it is not always possible to win in one turn, your Kylo deployment needs to be as impactful as it could possibly be, and this often involves delaying its deployment. So this is like an example of people just deploying him on curve and not doing much with him, just completely not understanding the lines that makes your deck powerful. So this is really something that is very important whenever you're playing your own deck. It's the most basic things. Obviously, there are some decks that are harder to play than others. There are decks that are more intuitive than others. Is to understand the lines that makes your deck powerful. What is your line? What are the synergies that make your deck powerful? And this is something that is, for me, the surface level of making good decisions throughout a game. The second level is understanding the matchup and have a plan for that matchup. So you have a plan related to your deck. So for example, you're playing an aggressive deck. You have a plan for that deck, trying to be aggressive, trying to put units down, and try to kill your opponent as quickly as possible. You're playing a control deck. You're trying to delay the game as much as possible, to the point where you get to in a position where you can slam super giant units on the board, or even completely exhaust your opponent with resource and just mill your opponent out. This is what we call a plan, but there's a plan for each matchup as well. Your plan is going to be changed depending on which matchup you're in. So let's say you're playing the Gar Saxon ECL deck. Your plan, if you're playing against the Hantu mid-range, your plan is to get up to 6, to get very far ahead with the Vader, and to maintain the pressure is to keep the board under control. You're the aggressor, yes, you don't want the game to be delayed, but you want to keep the board under control. It is a very board-centric matchups. So, and this requires obviously you understanding your deck, but also understanding the dance that happens between your deck and your opponent decks. Understand that. Think about it like as a piece of play in the theater, and everybody has to play his role, and understanding this will make you better at making decisions, because suddenly whenever you understand a matchup and you have a plan to win the game against a particular deck, every decision is easier to make, because every decision follows this blueprint that's going to allow you to follow through and get to point A to point B. You basically, a pilot at the end of the day, the idea of piloting a deck is to direct this deck from one point to another. If you don't know where you're going, you cannot be a good pilot. And to know where you're going, you need a plan. So understand the matchup, and the plan is the second surface level, but also the second level, I think, of making good decision. But to me, this is the most important one by far. The third one is your ability to see outside of the box. So this one is, once you've managed to, you understand your own deck, you understand the matchup, sometimes thinking outside the box is, on the other hand, the ability to not follow the plan, and sometimes to play a little bit differently depending on circumstances. Star Wars Unlimited is a rich game where there's a variety of different scenarios that can happen throughout a game. And depending on the game, and depending on the setup, you're going to be directed to make decisions that are not the decision that you usually take. They're not the plays that you usually make. But in the current instance, it makes sense. There is some situation where, as a Sabine player, in a matchup where you're not supposed to be the aggressor, where your plan is to be the aggressor, you are, in this particular situation, it makes sense to play the control player. Let's say your opponent has managed to dish out an unusual amount of damage to you early on, and you know that at any time they can kill you. Well, you cannot follow through with your regular plan of being aggressive. You're going to have to play more defensive in order to delay the game and possibly take control back on the game, close the tab, the damage tab on your opponent to the point where you can take control back of the game and finish off the opponent very quickly after that. So there are certain lines of play that sometimes you have to adapt. So your ability to see outside of the box, your ability to make plays that are outside the box, maybe make a play where instead of using a removal to kill one of your opponent unit, maybe kill one of your own units to trigger a when defeated ability, something that you usually would never do in Star Wars Unlimited, but in this situation you have to do it because this is what you need to do to win the game. And that will make the difference between a good player and a great player, is your ability to see outside the box. The fourth level, and to me the most difficult one to master, is your ability to recognize play pattern that gives information over your opponent's hand and play around it. This is something that, if you are a good poker player, you understand very well. Is like the entire play of poker is that depending on the opponent's behavior, the way they're betting, the way they are kind of the way they're checking, you kind of understand, and you have to kind of grow your understanding of what your opponent has in hand, and from that point knowing what to do. It's the whole point of a game of poker. In a game of Star Wars Unlimited, this dimension exists because you're playing against an opponent that has a hidden hand as well, and your ability to figure out what your opponent has in hand depending on how he plays can really give you a significant advantage. So, and there's ways you can do this. So for example, you see you're around resource 7 or resource 6 if you're playing against a hand 2 player, and your opponent just sacrifice a unit like this. You know very well that this is very much to get the -6/-6 for a Luke Skywalker that's going to come out. And obviously knowing that, you can make plays to avoid or mitigate that line of play. So there's things that, or your opponent plays a 4th throw where there's no unit to kill, or plays like a obviously very bad 4th throw. Or he's kind of, that's because he's setting up a second 4th throw, or he's setting up like something like or he's setting up like a second 4th or something. There's a lot of different things that you can deduct that your opponent has depending on how he plays. So you see your opponent is delaying his leader deployment, so he wants to play around this. That means he has no answer to that. So there's a lot of information you can extract from your opponents depending on the way he plays the game. And this will influence the way you play as well. And this is the most difficult aspect of the game to master, because it requires a very big knowledge of your opponent's deck, and it also requires you to understand things that are not on the board. But it is nevertheless a very important part of the game. So this really comes down to me. So those 4 factors here, if you can master all 4 of those aspects, you will make the best plays. So obviously it's easier said than done. So I'm going to give you some tips and some resource to how to fish, how to basically by yourself find out those different lines and try to master those four aspects as well as possible. And the first advice that I'm giving, of course, is to study the game from a theoretical standpoint. So, um, studying the game means every theoretical learning that you can have outside of just playing the game itself. There's a lot of things you can understand about Star Wars Unlimited, and a lot of things that you can figure out without the need of playing the game itself. It's basically kind of a shortcut. So if you are going to be playing Star Wars Unlimited, if you want to figure out the entire game just by playing, you are setting yourself for failure. You are much better off studying the game before, and once you've done this homework, once you've done that study, start practicing. But yeah, studying the game is the most cost-efficient way to learn the game. It's like the same if you're, it's just common sense, right? If you're going to be becoming a physicist, you're not going to start from the very beginning and refigure out the entire physics system before that. That is the most moronic thing you could ever do. Now, what you're going to do first is you're going to study everything that other physicists have done in the past, understand the physics of the world, the great theories, and then once you have all this knowledge, then you can start doing your own thing. And you should do the exact same thing for Star Wars Unlimited and for any activities that you undertake, studying the theoretical first, and then. So, what are the different things you can study in the game? The first thing you can study is the rules, which is very underrated in my opinion. Understanding the rules, you don't need to be like a judge level understanding of the game. What you need to understand is the basic interactions that your deck and that are relevant in the deck you're playing and in the meta you're playing. If you have a judge level understanding of the rules, that's even better. The more the better. But I would say that having a common knowledge of the rules and and the basic interactions that are relevant in the meta will be good enough for like 90% of the use cases. It also comes down to tournament rules and regulations as well. Knowing what happens, for example, whenever time goes off, you're in top 8 and time goes off, there's different tiebreaker rules. So something that was very relevant for when I won the Birmingham tournament is that I came down to basically rules about tiebreakers, that the rules of tiebreaker was that whoever has the most HP on base wins the game. And then also the rules that if both players has the same amount of HP, whoever wins the game is the player who has the initiative. So all those rules were extremely relevant in notably the final of the game, where I literally won the game just because I was able to claim the initiative while both of us had no damage on board, and I was able to exploit that to my advantage. So knowing the rules is very, very important. But that's really the surface level. Next is to know the cards. Obviously, you don't want during a tournament to be picking up a card and read the card to know what it does. I mean, sometimes whenever you're making you're making plays that are out of the box plays that are a little bit unusual, sometimes you have to check the exact wording of a card to see exactly how it works. But 99% of the case, you shouldn't be having to read cards whenever you're playing the game at a high level, because that's once again mental energy. Learning a card, learning how figure out how it works, that's all the mental energy that you're spending that could be spent in better ways. So know the cards, learn the cards, especially the cards that are relevant in the meta is extremely, extremely important. And for this, it's as simple as going on StuDB and reading the cards, following spoilers that they come out. For me, following spoilers as they get revealed before the season is a really good way, because it's very digestible. You don't have to learn all the cards all at once. You learn them as they're getting spoiled. It's also exciting to see what the future holds. And on Thog Hot Takes on my channel, we do review every single card as they come out. This allows us to basically learn the cards even before the game is released, which is a huge time saver, and it's also very fun. The next one is to know the decks. So it's good to know the card, but knowing the decks is even more important. Knowing the decks that are relevant in the meta is extremely important. Knowing how those deck function, what are the different synergies they use, what is their game plan to win the game, how do they actually win the game. So it's not really knowing only about what is written on the card, but what all the cards, how the cards interact with one another, what is the game plan of those decks, how do they achieve the win, how do they interact. So this is very important. And finally is knowing the matchup. So knowing the decks in a vacuum is very important, but knowing the matchups is how those two decks interact with one another is one of the most important things. If you know the matchup, you can set up a plan. So I'm not going to reiterate on this, but basically the idea is if you know the matchup, if you know the play and you know what part of the what is the play that each decks have into each other, what is the role that each of those decks have in the matchup, you will be able to play the game much better, and this will give you a direction. This will give you something to aim for whenever you are piloting your deck after that. So knowing the matchup is very important. Out of those four things, I think the most important one is the fourth aspect. It's also the most, unfortunately, it's also the most difficult to master because it requires tremendous amount of experience. Yeah. Moving on to the resource that you can check in order to become better at the game. For me, there's the holy trinity of websites that I think that you want to check out if you want to learn more about Star Wars Unlimited. And to me, this is YouTube, Sue, Star Wars Unlimited Competitive Hub, and Discord. So YouTube is going to give you access to all the great YouTube channels, such as my Talk Hot Takes, that will give you a lot of information about the meta, deck techs, strategy guides, that will allow you to grow your understanding of the game and know the game from a theoretical standpoint. Through Competitive Hub is the best website to observe the raw data of the meta. What are the most played decks? What are the decks that are successful in tournaments? This is the best place to find decks. This is the best place to study the meta. Everybody uses this website as far as I know. There's probably one out there, but this is the one that I personally use. And this is the one I use even to make my videos. So thanks so much to the person behind this website. And I couldn't recommend it more. It's such an important website to get better at the game, to understand the game better. The third website is Discord. Discord has the advantage of being a social media where you can really interact with other players, find players to play against, ask questions to some of the best players in the world. They will answer on the different Discords. So the three Discord that I like the most for competitive play, there are lots of great Discords, but I'm going to focus on what I believe are the best free Discords. There's some Discord that cost money, and I cannot recommend those because I've never been on those because they cost money and I will never pay for Discord personally. So it's kind of like I cannot recommend them because I've never been on them, so I don't know. But basically, the three free Discord that I recommend for competitive players is the Boston Network Discord, where there's a lot of great players that will answer, that you can interact with, that you'll be able to answer question. And there's also ways that you can find people to train with and train against. Exact same concept, but with a different team, is the Team Enigma community Discord, where you get the members of Team Enigma on this Discord, some of the greatest players in the world. We'll be able to answer your question. This is the Discord that I'm in, so if you want to ask me questions, this is the one that I will be answering on. And also find people to train against. And then thirdly, we have the Take the Initiative Discord, which has its own online league to play the game and to compete on, which used to be, in my opinion, one of the best places to train the game. Some of the best players in the world that are playing the game have at some point played this league. So this is a great place to get started in your competitive journey, especially if you want to play online. You don't have to go anywhere physically, which is really helpful. Unfortunately, the Take the Initiative League has kind of lost a lot of its popularity, but I really truly hope that they regain that eventually, because I think this is a great resource, especially for people who don't have teams and want to get some really good high quality playtest. As far as YouTube channel is concerned, here's the one that I would recommend for competitive play. Once again, it's not an exhaustive list. There's probably many more that I haven't mentioned, but those are the ones that I think are a good starting point, and then obviously you can expand further. For competitive, once again, I'm focusing on YouTube channels that are for competitive play. There are lots of great channels that are not solely focused on competitive, like for example, Veil Shot, I think is a good example of a YouTube channel which is more like generalist. So I'm talking about the one that are focused on competitive play. On this one, there's obviously myself, Thog Hot Takes. There's the channel of Wu, which is one of the best, in my opinion, the best American player. And he's obviously a great player and does a lot of content very similar to mine, like a lot of deck tech, tournament reports, guides, and such. Then you get the Swoop Racers, where you have Beton and Sip. Should I remind you, Beton is the former world champion, and those players are some of the best in the world. And they're part of my team, part of Team Enigma as well, so they have great content as well. We got the Late Night Gaming, a very underrated channel for competitive play. They have the Masterclass series, where they invite top players to talk about some of the best tech in the game. And this channel is, in my opinion, really, really good for that. Then you got the Nordic Takedown, where you get players like Jonah Niklas, or even I Am So Humble. We also part of Team Enigma, they do deck techs there, so they're really, really great content for competitive play as well. Then you got the Mock TCG, which is more focused on gameplay, where he actually plays games. And in my opinion, as far as like gameplay is concerned, this is the highest level gameplay I've seen on YouTube. Outside of just record of tournaments, of course. So this is a pretty good channel for this. Most other channels are affiliated to FFG, so not allowed to show gameplays from websites. So Mock TCG is not affiliated to FFG, doesn't have to deal with this. Then we got obviously the K2OD channel, where some of the best players in the US. They show deck techs there. They have various amount of contents talking about cards. We got the Underwhelming Barrage, which is a new podcast, I think hosted by John Tada, which is one of the best, really a great Star Wars Unlimited player. Then you got the Nexus, where the most like the UK players, they have some really, really great content there. And there's players such as like Big O Notation, one of the best UK player, and one of the best players in the world, in my opinion, who does also deck decks there. Really, really great content. They talk about their decks and their performance in tournaments. And then they get a Star Wars Dad, who has a lot of great content, a lot of great deck tech on there as well. Then, last but not least, there's also the Metafy, which is a blog website. And on this, you can have Yosera, Metafy, where he shares his thoughts and deck techs about the different, and has very, very in-depth articles. So his articles, there are some free ones, there are some one are paying. I've never checked the paying ones, but I know the free ones are amazing. So when I see how amazing the free ones are, I can only imagine how good the one that are when you have to pay for have to be. So really encourage you to check out Metafy of Yosera. I'll put the link. I'll put the link of every single of those YouTubes on the description below. And yeah, so every single link will be on the description. And Yosera is also the newest recruit of Team Enigma, so a great player to follow as well and to take advice from. So these are all the resources. Once you basically got yourself a lot of information about the game, obviously that is not enough. And the most important part is going to be to train. And I wrote train because it's really the thing you have to prioritize and you have to grind the most in order to get to the level you want to be. And I'll explain the benefits of that strategy in the comments below. It's not a waste of time to play over and over again for a various amount of reasons that I'll explain. But first of all, one is the main objective here. The idea is to train as often as possible against the best players possible. So this is not always easy for everybody because not everybody has access to great teammates or players that are really, really good at the game. But this is not something that is unredeemable, and you can build your play group. It's something that you have power on. It's not just, oh yeah, I see a lot of people complaining, oh, I don't have anybody to play against. I don't have anybody good to play against. This is something that you have power on. This is something you have power over. I build my play group and by myself from pretty much nothing. When the game first started, I've picked up on players such as Sip, Beton and Humble, You Can Call Me Al, and all the other members of Team Enigma way before they were known. So, and you can do the same thing as well. There's great amount of players out there, great players out there, and in order to get yourself very high quality playtests, you don't have to recruit the best players in the world. You have to recruit players that are just good at the game, and together you're going to become better, and that's very important to understand. And obviously you have to be playing against the best decks. You need to be playing against, prioritizing your training around playing against meta decks, and I think that's very important. So the first advice I give is to play online, and the reason why I advise people to play online is because, realistically speaking, unless you have your flatmate happens to be one of the best players in the world, in which case you can just play against him and in real life, and realistically people only have are able to play the game in real life about once, twice, or 3 times a week. It's relatively rare to have people who are able to play the game in real life against more, and even more so against good players. It's even more difficult to find good players in real life near that are available and near your area than playing against very good players that are online. Once you open up the ability to play across continents and across countries and across cities, finding good players becomes a lot easier. So my first advice is to play online. There's various amount of ways to do it. I won't detail them on this video, but but you should be playing online because it's the only way you can reach the critical mass of games that you need in order to become good at the game. But I also want to make sure that people also play in real life as well. That's very important. Obviously, it's very important to keep your community alive. At the end of the day, Star Wars Unlimited is a physical card game, so the fun end of the game is to play in real life. But that's not the only reason. There's also a practical reason why you should be playing in real life. If all you did was just playing online, the day you're going to be starting to become playing in real life, you're going to be very disoriented, because there's a lot of things that you have to be mindful of whenever you're playing real life, like drawing your cards, placing your resources without showing the card that you're placing on resource to your opponent, exhausting card, using token, keeping track of damage, actually manually resolving abilities, all those different things that are really important to do, that if you're a good player, you need to be able to follow through on them. And you need to not be distracted. You need to be 100% comfortable playing your cards physically in real life. So if by any chances you are in a situation where you don't have this ability to play against real life players, and 99% of your testing is going to be online, and then you're only going to be playing in real life during tournaments themselves, if you are one of those people, then the best advice I can give you is to play what I call goal fishing, which is basically just play against yourself, going through the motion, resourcing, playing cards, and this way, this will allow you to get through the motion, keeping track of damage, keeping track of stuff. It's actually quite fun to do, and this is something that I highly advise if you are someone who struggle to find people to play against. This could be a way for you to get this training on, so you train your muscle memory and you get comfortable playing with the cards physically once the time comes. The second advice, is one I already talked about earlier, is to find players with similar interests and objectives to train with. I think the most important to me, whenever I'm looking for training partners, motivation is more important than achievements. So if you're playing against someone who's won a tournament, and whenever you're putting your testing group together, if you're finding someone who won tournament but is unwilling to train on a regular basis, is not motivated, and all this, for me, or someone who's just interested in playing like rogue decks, not interested in playing meta decks and stuff. For me, it's more important to focus on someone who maybe does not have the same achievement, but has the same interest as you, and the same objectives, and the same motivation to train, and as well to play meta decks, in order to obviously train, and eventually finds out of meta decks that you can play and then be successful with. So in my opinion, putting together a group of players that you can train with regularly is going to be the key for you to get high quality playtests. And I always say that a playtest against a really good player is worth hundreds of playtests against bad players that you find randomly online. So to me, this is a very important part of the game that you need to be very, very aware of. So find players with similar interests, objective, and train with them. The third advice that I give concerning playtesting is to allow takebacks. So the idea is, whenever you play testing, you want to be playing against the most competent opponent possible. So if your opponent makes some silly mistakes or just something that they make not a suboptimal play, something they want to come back to, you should allow it as often as possible. Obviously, sometimes it's just a mistake that was done too long ago and would be too complicated to rewind everything. But most of the time, it is possible to take back and to rewind the game, and you should do it as often as possible. The reason for it, once again, is you want to have the highest possible playtest. If someone makes a silly mistakes, it will ruin the entire game, and it will give you unreliable results. So you should allow take back as often as is possible. I also like to create what if scenarios. So, for example, whenever there's a game out and you make a very important decision, especially toward the end of the game, it's hard to do if it's like the beginning of the game, because then you can't rewind the entire game. But like, play the game, there's a key decision that you have to make in the last few turns of the game, and wonder how the game would have turned out if you would have made that play instead of that play. And I think this is a really cool way to kind of see different scenarios and maybe reconsider some of the plays and kind of think about them and experiment with different things by rewinding the game and making it the other decision, and try both scenarios and see which one ends up in your better place. So I like to create what if scenarios sometimes when it is possible to do so. Another cool thing that you can do is to record your games, especially if you're playing online. You can record them and you can watch them later and see where you made some mistake. It's even better if you can see both players' hands, and then you can see how you can improve your gameplay. That can be another way for you to improve. When I was doing coaching, that was the primary things I was doing, is I was asking players to record some of the games they were playing and then show me the footage, and then I'll be able to kind of comment on them and tell them how to get better. And obviously the last element is to play timed games. It is a dimension of the game that is often overlooked, is the fact that we are playing a game where there's limited time, and as much as possible you want to avoid draws, so you want to play as quickly as possible, you want to play under the pressure of time as a training, and obviously playing fast will naturally come as you train more, but also there's certain ways you should be playing depending on the time left on the game. So obviously it is not allowed to purposely play slowly in order to make a game that should have been a loss to turn into a draw. However, it is allowed to play in such a way that the game is going to take longer. So for example, you have a play, one strategy will lead to kind of a racing strategy where games have a tendency to end very quickly, or the other one you can kind of play the more controlling game. In normal time, maybe with unlimited time, the controlling game would have, the racing game maybe would have given you better chance to win. But since there's very few time on the clock, it is completely acceptable to take a more control route in order to play for a draw instead of playing for a win, which can be acceptable, especially when you know you have no chance to win. Or if you already won the game one. So one of the importance, why is this so important to play a lot? And this is, I think, if there's one lesson you should learn from the Galactic Championship 2025, is that Beton won because he trained the most. He's the player who trained a lot, and the value of training is huge. It's not only a matter of like, even if you know everything that you theoretically have to do, training will give you so much more than this. And I'm gonna go through the different reasons why a good training makes a huge difference in a tournament. The first one is like a well-trained player is able to make effortless good decision. it is something to make good decision. It is even better to make effortless good decisions. So what I mean by this is that if you're making very good plays, but every time you make a play, you have to think for 3 hours, and it drains your mental energy every time you have to make a play, that is going to cost you on the long run, especially when you're talking about playing 10 rounds in 8 rounds, 9 rounds in one day. You're going to become exhausted, and you're not going to have the mental space to make more out of the box plays, to make more unusual play, or save mental energy for more complex setup whenever the time comes. So making good plays is great, making effortless good plays is even better. So 90% of your plays should be effortless. They should be easy decision that you don't have to think too much about, so that you can save that mental energy for the more unusual situations, for the more out of the box play. And you won't be able to make cool out of box plays if you are not capable of making effortless good decision in the first place, because you won't have the mental energy to think about all those possibilities. A well-trained player plays at a good pace. Something that is very important, especially if you're playing a control deck, is that if you're not able to play fast, if you will end up in a lot of draws that should not have been draws. Obviously, there are games that are just naturally very long, that no matter what you do, games are likely to end up in a draw, especially if both players end up winning game 1 and game 2. But but if you're a well-trained player, most of your game, you should basically almost never be in a draw situation. Draws should be very, very rare for a good player, because well-trained players are able to play at a good pace. Obviously, you don't always control the pace of your opponent, but generally speaking, if at least one of the two players plays fast, usually the game goes pretty quick. Another thing as well is that it's something that I've always observed, is that whenever you play fast, your opponent is naturally going to play fast as well, and sometimes play faster than what they're comfortable playing at. So playing fast can be kind of like, it can sometimes put the pressure on your opponent to play fast as well. While if you're playing slow, your opponent will also will have a tendency to play slow as well. So this is something that I've observed while playing the game. A well-trained player makes fewer blunders. So what I mean by blunders is forgetting to resource, forgetting to deploy a leader, that kind of thing. This is the kind of thing that typically happens when you're making too many decisions that requires a lot of mental energy, and then you basically, your brain just forgets things. And this doesn't happen as often whenever you're making so many effortless good decisions, so you're not really, you're going to be focusing, it's going to be much easier to focus on the long term if you're well trained, because most of the decisions you're making are effortless. And that means that you're going to be making fewer blunders, fewer like quote unquote stupid mistakes that you shouldn't be making otherwise. So this will help you as well. And then finally, a well-trained player understands the matchups and knows where he's heading even before the game starts. So this is something I've talked about, but I'm talking about it again because it's such an important part of what makes good players, is that having a plan and knowing what you're supposed to be doing in the matchup even before the game starts is only going to be something you're going to acquire by training a lot, and it will save you a lot of mental energy, and it will guide all of your decisions throughout the game in order to make, once again, easier decision and make things easier for yourself. So before we get to the last point, I just want to let you know that you can pick up HK47 on card market for less than €9. So I think it's a good deal, very good legendary that sees a lot of plays in a lot of decks that I think are quite good, well positioned in current meta, such as for example Boba 4 Data Vault and Piet Red. So now the last part of this video is going to be focusing on stuff that are not strictly related to Star Wars Unlimited, but everything that surrounds it whenever you're going into a tournament is to be well fed, well rested, and well focused. And this is something that is often overlooked, and it is one of the most important aspects if you want to make better plays. If you want to be a better player, better pilot, you need to put your body in the condition to do that. Obviously, playing 10 games in a row in an environment where you're not familiar with after traveling is something that's going to be taxing on your body. Whenever you're going to be coming back to a tournament, you're going to be exhausted. And I have a little story to kind of illustrate what I'm saying here. So my first really, really large tournament that I've ever took part in was a Magic the Gathering Grand Prix in Paris. And in this Grand Prix, I was pretty young, of course, and when I played this tournament, I played the entire day without eating and without drinking. And at the end of the day, I was so incredibly exhausted. I don't think I've ever been that exhausted in my entire life. I could even not even keep my eyes open. I was that tired. And obviously, when you are at this level of tiredness, you cannot be playing well. And obviously, I didn't do well in the tournament, and it is not a coincidence. So, from that point on, I promised myself that every time I would play a tournament, I would be eating throughout the day. And when I mean eating throughout the day, I don't only mean just taking a lunch break. I'm also having snacks in your bag so you can eat between rounds and all that stuff. So, and this is a very, very important part of the game. If you want to perform the highest level and make better decisions, make better plays, is to food, rest, and focus. So, talking about eating. So you need to eat and drink water throughout the day. So you can drink like sweet drinks like Coke and stuff like this are completely fine too. I got a bit of sugar in your body, but this do not hydrate you. So drink water is the most important. So drink a lot of water. Eat food. Eat good food, like brain food, not junk food, like things like nuts, like little fruits, like little vegetables, little tomatoes. Blueberries are great for that. This kind of food is really, really good for you whenever you're during tournament. It gives you energy, gives you healthy energy, and it's also what we call brain food. They will help you focus and retain information. And I also advise slow sugar the day before. What I mean by slow sugar is carbohydrates such as rice, pasta. So I could make an entire video about diet, but I would be quite far away from Star Wars Limited. But the long story short is a healthy body means an healthy brain. An healthy brain is very, very useful whenever you're playing a game at a high level. And so I think it's something that's very, very important to keep in mind. It's not because Star Wars Limited is not a physical game that you don't need to take care of your body to play it well. You very much need to take care of your body and do all those things well. So I understand that there's a lot of people who do well in starting card games and are very unhealthy, but that's not the majority. If you look at the majority of people, they're the majority of players who do perform well, consistently well in those tournaments, the majority of them, they are people that are pretty healthy, I would say. So, and obviously it's not only an advice for playing Star Wars Limited better, it's also a great advice for your life. It will improve your life in general. I'm not going to go on a tangent and talk about the benefits of a healthy diet, but you get the picture. Healthy body means healthy brain. Healthy brain means playing the game better. And of course, eat and drink throughout the day to not run out of gas, to not run out of energy, and to fight what is a very, very exhausting experience for most people. Another very obvious one is to try to have a good rest before an event. This is obviously easier said than done. We talked about I'm so humble during the Galaxy Championship, did not sleep in the last 4 days leading to the tournament because of jet lag. There are things he could have done. He could have taken sleeping pills to sleep. I think if you need to know yourself, you need to know your body, and you need to know what you need. Some people just sleep anywhere at any time. Some people struggle more. Obviously, going abroad and having to fight with jet lag is a significant disadvantage. So whenever you do so, take a few days. This is what Humble did. He did come a few days in advance. Maybe he should have taken more radical measure to make sure that he actually gets a good sleep. Force yourself to eat. There's another experience with Beton, who was pretty sick just before day 2 and didn't want to eat, and he forced himself to eat. And when the event started on day 2, he started feeling a lot better and was able to play at the highest level. That's because he forced himself to eat. Who knows if he would have been able to eat the Galactic, if he would have been able to win the Galactic Championship if he didn't eat in that morning. So eat food, get a good rest, and if you can't, force yourself to do it. force yourself to eat even if you're not hungry, and force yourself to sleep even if you're not sleepy, and use medication, use sleeping pill if needs be. And then the last one about the focus is obviously the fact that all the stressing part, obviously everybody deals with stress in a different way, listening to music, trying to relax, deep breathing, there's loads of different ways. But at the end of the day, something I really want people to understand is like, at the end of the day, it's only a game. There's not much on the line for Star Wars Unlimited is concerned. Like, even, I know this for a fact because Beton has the highest price you could possibly earn for the game. And yet, he's a person who didn't need it, and yet, it's not that much at the end of the day. So, take it easy. It's only a game. There's not much on the line. It's only to never forget the fact that you're playing for fun. And this, to me, this is basically what I tell myself whenever I'm playing, to kind of relieve some of the stress, some of the unnecessary stress that will prevent you from playing well. So here you have it. Eat, sleep, and focus is the best I can give. So I got some more kind of preparation advice in how to train for big tournaments. I have another video that I will put on the description below. But this is one more pieces of the puzzle if you want to be the best pilot possible. So this video is purposely not focused on choosing the best deck, because this is like a different subject. This is really about how to basically perform the best as possible with a given deck. If you got any question related to that topic, feel free to ask them in the comments below. I'll try my best to answer them. And thank you so much for following that video. Keep it also in mind that for how to improve your plays, there's always coaching opportunities on the Enigma Discord. So if you go on the Enigma Discord, you can ask for coaching, and you will have coaching from some of the best players in the world. I Am So Humble, Sip, Dylan, and also, of course, Beton, some of the best players in the world that will help you become a better player. Thank you so much for following that video, and I'll see you next time.